Fosi Audio DS2 here. And you might be wondering, why is it I am doing a review of Fosi Audio DS2 in 2024? For your information, this DS2 is not new, but this one, which I have in my hand, 2024 version, is in fact a different dongle altogether, considering that it uses different internal from the previous DS2. They still share the same name, but what's inside is different. So let's just have a look at the price and the configuration for this DS2 then. As you can see there, right, instead of running on ESS Sabre, now it is running on dual Cirrus Logic CS43131, a very popular Cirrus Logic DAC amp, okay, which is identical to this iBasso DC04 Pro here, and so many other Cirrus Logic dongle released in 2023 especially, okay, and which means also that, right, it uses Cirrus Logic internal amplifier. It does not have an external, or should I say auxiliary amplifier stage, and resolution for this DS2 is pretty much as per expected at 384 kHz 32-bit, capable of DSD256. And this is the most interesting part. This DS2, as shown there, claims a whopping power of 510 milliwatt of power per channel at 32 ohm. Crazy powerful. And then even the single-ended is already impressive at 130 milliwatt of power. And of course, as you can see here, the dongle itself, the build and the construction is pretty much straightforward. DS2 is a simple minimalist type of dongle, which comes only with this 4.4mm balance, 3.5mm single-ended, built with this metal chassis, aluminum, and of course, the only thing that you're gonna find on this, the body of this DS2, is just this independent volume adjustment, 60 steps, not 100, okay? And then this one LED indicator, and of course, USB female Type-C as usual, detachable. And this kind of like thin looking USB cable here, okay, which comes with it inside this box. Simple affair. For sound performance, this is going to be kind of a bit simple, all right, a review, because after spending quite a bit of time listening to this DS2, I have in fact spent quite a bit of time comparing it side by side with this iBasso DC04 Pro here. And there's a good reason why I am doing it so, because let me just clarify this, all right? Even from the first get-go, the kind of sound which I have heard from this DS2 is pretty much something which is very familiar to me. I told myself, hey, I know this kind of sound presentation, all right? I know this kind of sound signature. It is definitely identical in many ways, tuning-wise, to iBasso DC04 Pro, with an exception of several differences here and there, which I will describe to you after this, okay? First, let's talk about the general tuning for this DS2. This is yet another very well-tuned DAC amp dongle, which I consider as being truthfully neutral, fairly uncolored, okay, does not exhibit any kind of coloration except some hint of, forwardness on the mid-range itself. So it's kind of a bit fair to say mid-centric type of DAC amp rather than outright flat neutral. But otherwise, with the rest of the sound frequency, when it comes to lower frequency, bass, treble itself, it does sound pretty much transparent and neutral to my ears, especially when I test it extensively with this Atimotic ER2XR, which I use most of the time, okay, to test this. And also this, my neutral reference here, which is Sennheiser HD600, okay. So, and then when I actually switch to different type of IM, I also spend quite a lot of time using this Sivga Nightingale, my favorite IM here, okay, this magnetic planar. And the kind of sound which I have, heard from this DS2 is impressive yet again. It is highly musical, airy, dynamic, as it is analytical at the same time. So technically this thing is, without a surprise, very exceedingly technical as well, okay, very good, which is pretty much comparable to iBasso DC04 Pro. But let's just talk about some of the differences. Okay, perhaps you have seen my review on DC04 Pro and you know how much I love this DC04 Pro, okay? And I even announced that for 2024, this is the winner for price to performance ratio when it comes to dongle for 2023. Okay, so when I compare it with this DS2, let me just refer to my notes here so that I would not forget, all right? Because I have spent so much time comparing between these two, especially using this HD600 here on this particular one song, which is from Diana Krall, okay? And also Alison Krauss, these two songs that you can see here. All right, so let's talk about DS2 itself. Okay, the first obvious thing which I noticed is that the claim of power by DS2, all right, despite not having a high or low gain selectable, it seems to me always to be running on high gain, especially if you attach to 4.4 mm balance here. So the volume that I was able to get for proper listening loudness on this HD600 was at around 40 out of 60, okay? And once I achieve that volume, okay, the kind of sound which I'm hearing is pretty much the sort of sound which would remind you more of like a desktop DAC amp performance rather than something so tiny like this, which is impressive, okay? Driving this, remember? Okay? And then, so the next note which I put there, right? In comparison with DC04 Pro, I will openly admit that DC04 Pro still the one perform better with overall soundstage, the impression of soundstage width and expanse. This one kind of a bit more frontal, okay? More intimate with the way the staging itself. The instrument itself kind of a bit near field, okay, rather than outward, okay? The layering itself, thankfully it is clean, very well separated, the instrument and everything. It's just that I feel that the placement of the singer especially, which is the mid-range, and like some of the guitar which tend to be on the mid-range side, tend to be a bit closer, as opposed to when I listen to this DC04 Pro through this Sennheiser HD600. Okay, and then the next one, again, more frontal mids. So if you are the type of person who love vocal, perhaps you might even want to use DS2 instead of DC04 Pro. So what I'm trying to say is that DC04 Pro is truthfully neutral, transparent, and it does not alter any kind of sense of perception or depth to it. But DS2 is definitely, it brings those mid-range a bit more closer to you, to the listener itself. So what I'm trying to say is that, for example, somebody like Diana Krall or even Cine, especially if you listen to jazz, you're going to feel that the singer is right in front of you rather than that, like this. Okay, and the next one. DS2 also, because of that sort of more frontal presentation, okay, it seems to be slightly richer, all right, with certain sound texture, especially from the lower mid-range all the way to the upper mid-range. Because the emphasis there is that because of that, being mid-centric, I feel that, when compared with DC04 Pro, this DC04 Pro sound a bit flatter. Okay, and then let's just have a look. More micro detail. Okay, so let me just properly explain this. When I spend a lot of time comparing between these two, I pay attention to some of the extension, the presentation, the decay of the upper frequency especially, okay, or even the lower frequency. How does it present it? So what appears to me is that DC04 Pro offer a bit more of air, all right, to the transient itself. The way it flows, it's just like, flowing and flowing all the way to the decay dispersal, okay, to the uppermost frequency. But it does not emphasize on the macro detail while doing that. It focuses a bit more on micro detail. And that's why I am hearing kind of a bit more of air, okay, towards the upper frequency. Whereas this one would appear a bit more stronger on the macro detail of the treble itself. So which means that I would hear a bit more of crispness to the attack, to the decay, but the dispersal is not as airy as this DC04 Pro. When it comes to timbre balance between these two, I will admit that because of that airy element that DC04 Pro offers, it tends to be a bit more analog sounding as compared to this DS2. Okay, so let's see what else. And the volume needed by this DC04 Pro when driving this Sennheiser HD600 is at around 57 out of 100. So I hope you get an idea how much does it differ between these two. All right. Other than that, I would say that they are pretty much similar in many ways with the sound presentation itself, with the differences which I have already mentioned earlier. When it comes to power efficiency, this DS2 is quite admirable, okay? Again, when compared with this DC04 Pro, okay, this DS2 was able to score 13 hours before my phone here, which is Xiaomi Mi 90, running on 4000 mAh of battery, ran out of battery, driving this Tanjin Zero here. So that is definitely impressive because DC04 Pro was only able to score at around 8 to 9 hours maximum. You see there's a lot to digest in. I know, sorry about that. Okay, but for the sake of comparison, right, so that you're gonna get some idea, you can pause the screen, have a look at it, and I will kind of like try to digest it before I explain some of the things to you. And you perhaps might have, remember I have done a review 1 year ago on Fosi DS1. I can actually compare it directly to this DS2. And in general, I would say that definitely this DS2 is a better performer compared against DS1 in many ways, as you can see there on the dynamic aspect of it. And even all four elements of the sound aspect of it, except for technicalities, I would still say that DS1 is pretty much comparable to DS2 when it comes to technicalities. Otherwise, this DS2 is definitely a better dongle compared to DS1, okay? If you're wondering. And also when it comes to timbre, this is a bit more analog compared to DS1. But compared with the rest of the competition, let's just pick up one. I already have mentioned to you at length how does it compare with DC04 Pro, but this is how it scores like against DC04 Pro. And perhaps I would just simply admit here, throughout my testing of both, I am more inclined, honestly, will admit that I still like this DC04 Pro more over this because I prefer a less frontal approach when it comes to the mid-range itself because I listen a lot to jazz. But if being mid-centric is the one that you prefer, then I would say that this DS2 is richer sounding, okay, more frontal. It is definitely richer sounding than DC04 Pro, okay. And then compare it against the rest of the competition, it is quite obvious that, one of my latest favorite for under, let's say, up to 110 US dollar, this EPZ TP50 here, okay. Then you might ask me, how does these two compare? Okay, one thing for sure is that it is quite obvious from the rating itself, this EPZ TP50 is superior, okay, in every way possible that I can think of. Because this TP50, one of the key things is that it offers very effective filter, very effective features, which you can easily toggle anytime to tune the sound and everything, all right? And the tuning itself, technically this is superior, dynamically this is superior, tone and timbre this is also superior, all right? And even many other areas except for, let's say, they are pretty much similar with sound richness. So at least between these two, right, despite being cheaper, half the price of this TP50, this DS2 is as rich sounding as this EPZ TP50. Timbre Signature. How does this DS2 compares against the rest of the competition? As you can see there, all right, have a look at it. Fosi Audio DS2 sits right in the middle, okay, between analog and hi-fi sound. And it is pretty much identical to FIO KA13, FIO KA5 in that regard, okay? So if you are the owner of FIO KA13 and FIO KA5, it is pretty much similar to this DS2. With so many dongles being released nowadays, and I can guarantee you we're gonna see even a lot more of Cirrus Logic. But I think this year will be more on CS43198 rather than CS43131. But it does not mean that you're gonna stop seeing CS43131 because CS43131 tend to be cheaper to implement, more cost effective and more attractive, to the market on the selling front. And if I look at it, if you don't need for any kind of enhanced advanced feature like what DC04 Pro offer, or even this FIO KA17 offer, or even this EPZ TP50, you just want independent volume adjustment, you just want proper power, you just want a bit more of mid-centric performance, okay? Then Fosi Audio DS2 is highly recommended for that purpose.